All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Paul Thread, International Editor of the Cyber Express, and we have a star-studded cast to talk about cybersecurity trends in 2025 and what's coming in 2026. With me are Jihan Kovacs, Cyble's Regional Vice President of Sales for the Meta region, Tim Smith, Cyble's Head of Channel and Alliances for the ANZ region, Ronald Pipkins, Cyble Senior Solutions Engineer for the US, and Doc Shinakra, Cyble Senior Manager for Research and Intelligence. Welcome, everyone. It's great to see you all.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
All right. And and welcome to our audience also. And before we start, I just wanted to mention that that our research team has put out several reports in recent days, which can be found under the research uh, section of Cyble's website. And there's another one coming in the next couple of days from our research team that's going to be really great. So I recommend that everyone go and check those out. So with that, I guess we will get going. Jihan, why don't we start with you? What stands out as you look at everything that's happened in the Meta region this year?
Sure. Thank you, Paul. And thank you for the introduction as well. We see a lot of threats globally, but we see different kinds of threats in different regions. Of course, threat actors are targeting all kinds of verticals and industries, but the attacks are slightly different depending on the vertical and the region. We've seen in the Meta region, which I cover actually, a convergence of financially motivated crime, state-sponsored organizations, geopolitical fueled hacktivism, and we see a massive target on government BFSI and critical infrastructure. And actually, the key trend that we saw on the marketplace was compromised access, data breaches, and we're seeing very prophylactic threat actors, and they are now targeting very high value industries. And we're not only seeing it in public entities, but we're also seeing it in the private entities as well. For example, in terms of compromised access, government, BFSI, and retail combined reached 40% of the initial access listings, 40%, right? The number one, which might be different worldwide, is retail. So primarily retail is at the forefront because of the high value of payment card information, customer PII, which can be later used for fraud. Then we saw that government and law enforcement, maybe for espionage, for disruption, which posing a national security risk, which we also see a lot in this region. And of course, we never let off the BFSI sector. BFSI continues to be targeted to exploit access for monetary gain. However, what we have seen, which is quite interesting, of course, you have the prophylactic threat actors that everybody knows, the Step Bro, Person X, Big Brother. And these threat actors actually combined are only 15% of these attacks, which means that 75% are opportunistic threat actors. And that means that there is actually becoming a lower barrier of entry to the marketplace. We are seeing a lot of new players coming in. Types of attacks we are seeing attacks on Saudi Arabia in hospitality and retail sector, 7 billion records, 30 GB of data has been claimed to have had access to. And the threat actor, which was actually able to provide samples even for this data. We've seen government officials in Kuwait being compromised. Threat actors have actually claimed to have access to their Outlook. Of course, these need to be validated. Maybe the timestamps could be out or it could be later on. But the point is, threat actors are talking about it and do have access. Next, government alone accounted for 28% of the breaches. They were the most impacted. But interestingly enough, BFSI and education were also in the second and third respectively with 10% and 8.4%. What this is showing us, it's showing us that actually organizations are being targeted that have a lot of citizen PII and employee information, personal information, the sectors that are holding the most critical data, which could be used for either espionage, financial fraud, and identity theft. And we've seen actors like Kazoo, Digital Ghost, and Centap. However, again, many new players coming in. We've also seen major leaks across UAE Saudi, Morocco, Turkey, over 7 million to be precise. We've seen entities in Dubai, critical infrastructures, where threat actors have actually claimed to have access to over 620,000 records, even hashed passwords, health information, ID numbers. We've seen hospitals here compromised, where attackers actually claim to have a database of health PII, which is restricted. Also, on the other side of the Middle East, you have countries like Morocco, National Fund, where somebody actually had access to over 220,000 family records and 750,000 individual documents, being able to provide a sample of 10,000 PDFs, which is incredibly scary. We've also seen ransomware attacks with the big players that we know in the prophylake threat actor industry, which is the Killing and the Night Spire, etc. And the most targeted for ransomware was actually UAE, KSA, and Turkey. And Killing Ransomware Group wasn't only focusing on those countries, but they were the most prophylake for Kenya and Uganda, which is something that we are seeing, which is new, claiming responsibility for over 20 incidences. One thing I would like to highlight that is very interesting, a completely different vertical was at the forefront for ransomware, which was construction. So unlike the other sectors of government and BFSI, construction was really hit hard with ransomware, followed by government and BFSI, which was something new. We also saw a zero-day abuse across Fortinet, Ivanti, Apple, Microsoft. We saw high CVE risk scores of over 9. That's not to discredit these vendors, but this is very, very common with internet-facing devices and enterprise management platforms, which means that you need to have, good visibility into this. And lastly, but not least, of course, we cannot cover everything. Hacktivism, due to the geopolitical situation across the regions, we do see a big increase in hacktivism. And actually, the Meta region contributed to 8% of hacktivism cases, largely fueled by situations across the region. Primary tactics for these kind of attacks include website defacement, DDoS, and significant data exfiltration. And these, of course, are focusing on the government and law enforcement and these kind of industries. So just to summarize and finish up, because I have to leave time for everybody else, the key takeaway for us that we're seeing here, whether you're construction, whether you're retail, whether you're BFSI, whether you are private, you are all a target. And the second thing to have is you need to have the visibility here in this region, because there's a lot of new players coming in and new players are unpredictable. So thank you.
Wow, thanks, Jihan. That's a lot of great stuff. Tim, what do you see happening in ANZ?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Jen. That was absolutely amazing.
Oh, looks like I had the slide first. So
yeah, APAC first. Okay. So look, I guess where I'm going to start is putting context around what we're actually seeing in today's threat landscape. And more importantly, what we're actually looking at in organizations across critical sectors. So when we're looking at this, and we're looking at all the latest intelligence, it shows the government, BFSI, and retail sectors are continuing to be primed by targets for cyber criminals. Together, this is in industries accounted for around 38.5% for all access listings. Now, this is alarming because it's 27% of confirmed breaches. Now, this is a highly sought after on underground markets. And second, the attackers are successfully turning the access into real world compromises. Now, when we're looking at all these things, when we're looking at the specific ransom activity, one group clearly stood out. Quillen is emerging as they dominate ransomware operation. Now, it's the reason, we look at this as around 94% of the confirmed attacks, which particularly concerning in their strong focus of BFSI sector, where it disrupts the data thief and reputation damage can have scaled across the financial and all the consequences of what it does. Now, when we look at this, it looks across all sections of the records of 1,586 total breaches. So most of all, we're looking at this with the government law enforcement agencies, education, and BFSI. These sectors are attractive not only because of the sensitive data they hold, but also because of the operational pressure they face, making them more likely to pay ransom or struggling with the rapid incident response. Now, so what does this all mean? The threat landscape is no longer defined by isolating incidents. It's systematic and persistent and increasingly target by organizations by moving beyond reactive security and investing in protecting their threat intelligence. Now, this continues by monitoring and rapid response capabilities. Now, within Cyble, our mission is to help organizations to stay ahead with all these threats by providing real-time intelligence and actionable insights, so you're not just responding to the attacks, but also anticipating them. That's what we're seeing in the APAC at the present time right now.
Thank you, Tim. Great stuff. And we'll move on to ANZ next.
Okay, so look, this is very similar with APAC, right? So when we look at the data and the highlights, just how sharply attackers are focusing on their efforts. The retail sector and the account for around 34% of access listings, nearly 3 times higher than BFSI, making in most activity trade entirely their point for underground economy. This reflects how valuable retail access has become both for immediate modernization and also downstream attacks. On the ransom front, activity was high. Just 5 groups were involved in responses of 45% of these ransomware incidents. We were looking at things like Qantas, which was leading up to around 6 million records exposed, and Medisecure with 13 million, alongside incidents affecting law firms, real estate, telecom, and also hospitality industries. These cases reinforce that no industry is off limits at all to any data and operational continue are at stake right now. So when we're looking at this stuff, we're looking at the final hacktivists groups such as RIPASEC and PPHM targeting 79 domains, remaining us to look at all the driven attacks around the persistent and driven threats. Overall, I guess the message is clear. Attackers are targeting and concentrating on fast-moving and organizations that need real-time intelligence to stay ahead, and this is exactly where Cyble is, and we play the critical role to help all our customers.
Thanks, Tim. That's some great stuff. Great info. Docs, what do you see happening in Europe?
So Paul, 2025 for Europe has been really distinctive when we, see the entire threat landscape. The figures are already on the view foil here. And as I can recall the figures from 2024 and comparing it to 2025, we have seen almost a 28% year-on-year rise over the attacks. And when I say these attacks have risen, we need to now consider Europe being the center play of a lot of events, economy, war, trade wars, a lot of things that have been happening around Europe. So, let's understand from, all these things from the strategic and tactical standpoint both. So when I say, when we see the German manufacturing industry, right, we know how, affluent the industry is in terms of technology, in terms of industrial control systems, in terms of, the equipment and machineries that they have been supplying to the world. Of course, then, there are a lot of big European manufacturers which are part of the semiconductor ecosystem as well. So we have seen specifically on these sub-industries, an attack has increased. When we talk about cyber espionage attacks or even ransomware attacks. Similarly, coming on to one of the main critical infra as well as public utility, that is healthcare systems in Europe. They have been on a rise, and more concerning is these are the specialty hospitals or hospitals which are related to psychiatric treatment centers or de-addiction centers, which have interestingly gone under the attacks far more than the normal healthcare services that we see. Then particularly concerning again, from the supply chain standpoint, that IT sector in Europe, especially Germany and France, have faced some really cascading supply chain compromises. Moving on to the sector which is most critical, and we've been hearing it after the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which is the energy sector in terms of energy security. We have seen intensified attacks on Italian public utility sector, and followed by a lot of attacks on maritime and aviation, transportation, and logistics sectors. Now, why these attacks are increasing, or how, this is actually, shaping up, is because somewhere, we are seeing a very, the line between a state-backed actors and, normal cyber actors, or threat actors, or cyber criminals, or activists. The lines are blurring now, and we are seeing the increased level of sophistication of these attacks going up over there. We have seen, state-sponsored operations have intensified. APT groups like Fancy Bear, Sandworm, Gamadon, they have actually, deployed so many zero-day exploits against Ukraine and EU state members. Similarly, Chinese state actors like Salt Typhoon have, penetrated across various European telecommunication infrastructures. Mustang Panda, again, specifically targeting maritime and the government and LEA sectors. So, and these are actually becoming more and more gruesome every day. The scale of cyber espionage and sabotage operations are increasing. We have seen North Korea's Lazarus group, the kind of complex and sophisticated social engineering campaigns that they are putting up against European defense contractors, and especially the drone component manufacturers supplying to Ukraine. That has, that has a particularly concerning trend. And similarly, as I said, the lines are blurring. So in terms of, the pro-Russian activist campaigns, we have been seeing it from the start of the conflict since 2022. But, they have been persistent. They have been far more aggressive, and not just, restricting themselves to DDoS attacks, but they have escalated themselves to even industrial control system intrusions. We have seen the minimally secured VNC connections or VNC servers being infiltrated, or the internet exposed systems have been, HMIs have been infiltrated. And, specifically in, other water utilities, or the energy utilities, or the public transportation systems, and across Spain, and as I recall, Czech Republic, Poland, and even France too have seen that trend, right? So, to see, when we see the larger picture and the holistic picture after Q1 2025, what we have witnessed is that the supply chain attacks on Europe are particularly overwhelming. We have seen, one of the largest attacks on a Swedish human resource software development company, which disrupted almost 200 municipalities across, the country. And then we saw how a prominent aerospace and defense manufacturer, suffered an attack, and that disrupted a lot of European airport operations. So what fundamentally distinguishes 2025 from 2024, and in terms of attacks, or in terms of the threat methodology adopted by threat actors, is the speed of the attacks, and the nefarious adoption of automation, AI integration, and the commodification of sophisticated tools via ransomware as a service, phishing as a service, malware as a service. So all these things are, making the threat landscape more intense, as we move on year. Talking on the regulatory front, Europe is responding with unprecedented rigor. NIS2's expansion to over 18 critical sectors with mandatory incident reporting within 24 hours. DORA is in full effect now, which is fundamentally reshaping the financial sector and the financial sector's resilience over there. Similarly, the Cyber Resilience Act is trying to introduce security by design. The Cyber Solidarity Act, strengthening a cross-border incident response mechanism. And we are seeing certain improvements in terms of, Europe now stands out 7 point up in the cybersecurity cyber risk index. Uh, but what it means, the bottom line still remains is the regulatory system is pushing the right behaviors, but compliance of these regulatory framework does not mean that Europe is resilient enough. The sophistication gap is widening. Attackers are more sophisticated, whereas defenders also need to up their game and understand the critical. They need to address their critical challenges out there. So there are talent shortages, there are alert fatigues, there are a lot of other security complexes which Europe needs to gear for. And and I hope that we see some decline in Europe in terms of attacks in 2026. Thanks, Paul.
Wow, Docs, thank you. That was a lot of great info. Um, Ronald, what is happening in the U.S. and North America, which is about maybe half of the world's cyber attacks? There's a lot going on there.
Yeah, that's right, Paul. So about 40% of the attacks that have happened globally in the past year have happened in North America. A lot of the threat actors are focusing on us for obvious reasons, our infrastructure, our economies, and so on and so forth. A lot of the industries that have been targeted by data breaches, which were the number one threat vector here in the States, are the BFSI sector, as well as governments, IT, and ITES. And so in those arenas, people are attempting to compromise data and expose it in various ways to essentially undermine the security of the North American economies, also to use those identities to access highly financially valuable identities, as well as data sets specifically from the government that they can use in nefarious ways. Next, we're seeing a lot of ransomware attacks executed by the most prolific global threat actors and APT groups like Akira, Clop, Quillen, and Play, specifically against the construction, manufacturing services, pro services, and healthcare industries. Beyond that, we're seeing a great number of attacks from nation states. They've increased significantly from the previous year. So we're seeing attacks from countries like Iran and Russia, North Korea, and China. These state-sponsored attacks are also affiliated with smaller APT groups that are attacking us in order to compromise our government entities and installations, our military, and so on and so forth. And then lastly, there are a great number of zero-day vulnerabilities that have been exploited here in the States against the most common and largest software and hardware developers like Apple, Microsoft, Cisco, Ivanti, and Fortinet. Threat actors in those instances are attacking and realistically trying to exploit those vulnerabilities to compromise organizations and laterally proliferate into their environments, steal data sets, ransomware them, and do other nefarious activities against them. Beyond that, there have been an uptick in hacktivist activities, specifically in the OT and ICS industries. So those infrastructures are being attacked in order to undermine the security of not only United States but other North American countries, and those are primarily the types of attacks that we're seeing. Beyond that, there have been some significant attacks by groups like Lapsus and Shiny Hunters. There have been some attacks against state organizations like the city of Minneapolis that was attacked very viciously this past summer in July. Millions of records and terabytes of data have been exposed, and creates a lot of issues not only for individuals but for state entities as well.
Uh, Thanks, Ronald. That's a lot of great info there. Um, See, we've got one more slide here, which is the global picture, and we will turn to Docs for what he's seeing there.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. We have heard all my panelists, Tim, Jian, Ronald, from the various regions that they have brought their insights about, and the standpoint on that, the different type of cyber attacks over there. So, building on from the regional impact, I would just want to step back for the global picture in 2025. And, I would say we have actually seen some critical inflection points that transcended across geographies. We have seen that. We witnessed something paradoxical this year. Law enforcement agencies have, been able to get some certain unprecedented wins against these, cyber adversaries by disrupting their infrastructures. But the underground scenario has not completely collapsed. It has just migrated. And we have seen increased activities and I would say more diversified, more distributed, more private activities happening across different, underground forums, dark web marketplaces. Now, similarly, when I say, from the ransomware standpoint, if I compare it last 5 years, and if my figures are correct, we have seen over 350% jump, from some odd 1,500 attacks in 2020 to over 6,500 attacks this year. So this is like a complete evolution of ransomware landscape. And the most significant evolution that I see is, as I already mentioned, there is a complete erosion of boundaries between state actors and cyber criminals. As state actors are adopting ransomware tactics for plausible deniability, while criminal groups like, as Ronald said, scattered collapses hunters, they are operating with APT levels of sophistication. So, similarly, when we see, from the vulnerability standpoint, we have seen almost a 15% increase from last year, where we saw nearly 40,000 vulnerabilities being announced or being revealed. Now we have over 45,000 vulnerabilities as on date. When I say that, which are the critical red flags in a lot of entities and a lot of sectors, and especially almost close to about 2,500 industrial control specific vulnerabilities, which operate major critical sectors. So the volume is not the problem out here. The problem is how fast are we patching, or how fast the attackers are weaponizing it for the speed of their attacks. And we have seen these speed of attacks in, when we see the supply chain compromises, which have over the time become the more preferred attack types, and this because they present a very large attack surface to the attackers, and we have seen the Shai-Hulud attacks of especially the NPM package poisoning, compromising hundred of developer accounts. Uh, but the real pattern is, there is an upstream targeting, where it is, the managed service providers, the identity providers, the SaaS authenticate trust relationship providers. So all these things are actually now becoming the trend of attacks for large scale, impact. Uh, we have seen threat actors, turning towards, exploiting the trusted security softwares, which has become an important espionage vector. Organizations are hardening their own perimeters, uh, while they, at the same time, they rely on vendor integrations that provide multiple downstream access. So one upstream breach can reach hundreds of customers simultaneously. And organizations need to understand the impact of such, breaches that we have already witnessed in 2025. So, as I said, attack velocity is increasing in 2025. Fundamentally, it is challenging the detection models that we already have, or which are traditionally being deployed. So, we have seen, click fix attacks have surged year over year, while AI has improved the level of sophistication of, the phishing attacks that we have seen. Credential thefts have evolved from just plain brute force attacks or use of compromised credentials to session and token hijacking. So what fundamentally distinguishes 2025 is not that we have faced more attacks. Okay, it is that we have actually faced different types of attacks which require very holistic approach, a detailed approach on preparing our defenses. So that's why I say that the defense paradigm needs to shift towards identity centric, supply chain transparency, behavior analytics, and securing our OT technologies, operational technologies, their segmentation. And this doesn't have to be our future initiatives. This has to happen in 2026 as we progress into 2026. That's all, Paul, from my side. Thanks.
Thanks, Doc. Well, you kind of touched on it, so let's actually move into what people see coming in 2026. Jihan, anything that you see coming in 2026 that people should know about?
Yes, absolutely. So I think with the digital transformation that's happening, a lot of people are moving to the cloud. And historically, threat actors were relying on encryption for ransomware. I think with the amount of entities moving to cloud, that also possesses a huge amount of risk. And ransomware will pivot to cloud native extortion first models, which means that they will focus on getting access to the full cloud environment, making sure that they can delete a backup and keep full control of it. This will make attack timelines go from days to hours. So I think, it's time for especially those organizations moving to cloud to be more vigilant and to get more visibility into potential threats like these that could take place.
Wow. Thank you. Tim, what do you see happening in 2026?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Look, what we're predicting, right, is we're looking at identity. It's going to become the primary target for threat attackers, right? So when I'm talking about that, we expect a wider spread of abuse of like device code, open authorization consent by hijacking and taking the token to replay for persistent and MFA bypass. So identity is going to really be the artifacts of such as the tokens and service principles around what is going to be treated as the crown jewels, right? That's what we're predicting right now in ANZ and APAC.
Oh, wow. Great. Thank you. Ronald, what do you see happening in 2026?
Well, Paul, I foresee an uptick in infocellular malware and credential stealing malware being used to, attack cloud and session artifacts specifically. I would anticipate that, the infocellular malware itself will focus on gathering, artifacts like, command line credentials or JSON web tokens, passkeys, graph tokens, things like that. And then once they have those, they'll be able to leverage them in various ways. They'll gather them primarily through socially engineered attacks, malvertisements, also potentially, some other threat vectors that could be exploited. I would also suggest that here in North America specifically, there's going to be an uptick in the stringent nature that the regulatory and insurance organizations are monitoring their customers with. So essentially, in the next year, you're going to see more scrutiny around disclosure requirements of identity incidents. Beyond that, there will be brand new exclusions that are a part of the contracts for insurance. Additionally, premiums will increase. I think that organizations will have to consider self-insuring. Beyond that, I think organizations will have to be hyper-focused and vigilant on gathering evidence-grade telemetry to ensure that they're able to meet the stringent requirements of the regulatory and insurance agencies that hold those insurance policies for them. I really do believe that in the next year, premiums are going to increase about 25 to 30%. And I think that's going to become prohibitively expensive for some organizations and cause them to strongly consider self-insuring.
Wow, that's a lot to deal with there. Thank you. Docs, anything else from you?
Yeah, Paul, I would like to actually, somewhere also talk about, because with the advent of AI, how threats are, how it's gonna, shape up our security landscape. We see, as organizations are rapidly deploying different type of, browser integrated co-pilots, agentic AI systems, different MCP servers, but there are certain governance framework which are lacking. So automatically these tools themselves create a very large attack surface and elevate risk of data exposures, compromises, and further supply chain breaches. Similarly, we gonna see, and we are already observing, and this is gonna further decrease in terms of the timelines, as I have again been harping upon, with AI bots handling reconnaissance, initial compromise. Somewhere we have also seen ransom negotiations happening, adapting. This demands a real time based on how the victim is. They are already able to profile that. So they what we I personally feel is that they are now gonna refine their lateral movements across the victim's network so as to increase their speed of attacks. Similarly, we have definitely seen, over the past 2 years, how threat actors are leveraging AI for improving, their exploit mechanisms. Uh, and now since the AI has moved in a direction where it is more accessible, so we may see even low sophistication actors also weaponizing vulnerabilities rapidly, particularly in edge devices, VPN appliances, and probably enterprise collaboration tools as well. So that's what I can think of off the top of my head in terms of AI, AI-related threats that we can see in 2026.
Great, thank you. There were two others that stood out to me from Cyble's work that I just wanted to mention. One is that phishing as a service will get dangerously automated. Kits will automate end-to-end session replay, dynamic obfuscation, and OAuth and device flows. So we will see large-scale credential theft that bypasses your basic phishing defenses. So that was one that stood out to me. And the second is that mobile fraud will get worse as we see NFC relay malware as a service. So that's something else that we will probably see in 2026. So a lot of scary things there to get ready for. So speaking of which, I wanted to ask everyone if is there one thing people should do to get ready for all these threats? What's something that everyone should do? Jihan, maybe we'll start with you on that one.
Yeah, I think visibility is very important. Having visibility into potential compromises, also having visibility into potential vulnerabilities, and making sure that they are in fact patched, right? This is very important. So I think visibility is key. And this is, I always believe, with more knowledge is more power. So that's something that organizations should focus on.
Great, thank you. Tim, what do you think people should do as we move into 2026?
Look, I just really think everyone should be just covering off what they're looking at, making sure that they're covered in everything that they're doing right now, and also just making sure that they're scaling in the right ways of putting the assets and covering all their PII for everything they're doing right now.
Great, thank you. Ronald, what do you think people should do as we head into 2026?
I would suggest getting a cyber risk quantification assessment done for your organization to better understand, how much a breach would cost you, right? You'll have a better understanding of the assets that are vulnerable, realistically, what you can afford to remediate, and if you had to say, make buybacks or purchase new assets, those type of things. So that cyber risk quantification would be very helpful in better understanding how resilient your organization would be after an attack. Beyond that, I would suggest that your organization prepare itself to be able to ingest and vet, um, you know, enterprise, um, high fidelity forensics in terms of the metrics that you're monitoring from your different assets to ensure that you are apprised of, any attacks, IOCs that can be correlated through your logs and things of that nature to reduce dwell time from attacks. I really think that's something that's really important to do. I think that in a lot of cases in the past, people have been able to implement, cyber tool sets that were check boxes, for compliance or for their own personal internal security needs. But moving forward, those insurance organizations and governing bodies aren't going to allow you to simply satisfy those requirements with having a tool in place. It will also require policies in place to ensure that you're vetting that data and you're apprised of what's going on in your environment, and you can respond quickly in order to thwart those efforts from malefactors, right? So if you can reduce that dwell time to something that is nominal and not significant, you have a higher chance of withstanding that breach.
Oh, thank you. That's a lot for people to do there. Docs, anything from you for 2026 recommendations?
So Paul, as I previously brought out as well, the regulatory, and as Ronald just said, they're gonna be people need to follow the regulatory frameworks. What I personally believe is now that since we see that there has been a large trade shift, in 2025, the geographical map of trade and businesses have improved or has shifted in different directions. And similarly, when I see in terms of regulations or the regulatory standards that we talk about are still very regional centric as of now. So we need to have global frameworks coming up, because businesses are not just exposed to their own regions. They are doing trade across geographies, across regions. Many of these regions do not have very very stable regulatory frameworks over there. Then if they have those frameworks, then the compliance or the governance is not at its best, and these businesses heavily rely on their local suppliers, their regional suppliers, their global suppliers. And as I said, again and again, I'm hopping again and again on supply chain attacks. So they need to somewhere improve the entire governance and regulation framework, so that we build more resilience. And when I say resilience, because attackers are they are not confined to any boundaries or any regions. When they are attacking, they are attacking across the globe. So that is why this framework, this resilience, this compliance, this governance also has to be borderless. That is what I can say for 2026.
Thank you. All right, that's a lot of great info, everyone. We've covered a lot in about 45 minutes or so, but I wanted to leave time for audience questions if anyone has any. You can possibly do the Q&A or send it into the chat. If there's any questions, we'll gladly try to answer them. We'll give them a minute. I haven't seen any, so you guys must have been really good. You answered every question they had. So with that, I mean, what I heard is that attackers are getting faster and better, and defenses really need to keep up with them. So that's a big challenge for everyone, and you know, I certainly think that everyone is up for it. So you know, I would like to thank Jihan, Tim, Ronald, and Doc for their great insights, and to our audience for their time. And be sure to check out the research section of Cyble's website for more insights. We have a lot of great studies there. So, and I think that's about it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
And have a good day ahead. Bye-bye. And a nice New Year too, and Happy Christmas to everyone.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Bye-bye.
Happy holidays.